When I arrived home, Eliza met me sitting on the porch. She was slightly in discomfort with child, you see, but offered to prepare something, as it was quite a past due, and she left to prepare some afternoon tea for us. Per our constitution, Earl Grey. I answered a call. It was my friend, and he quickly described his current status. His department had issued several active warrant depositions for suspects, he was taking the lead in his jurisdiction, and issued an arrest-on-site order. I could now immediately arrest the suspects on outstanding warrant, and conduct my own interrogation with them. I thanked him for his rather devious way to allow me this avenue without involving my already suspected department compromise. Quite brilliant lad. I tried to absorb the contents of his speedy message. I took the time to reflect. The evening was turning cool now. Soon the clouds would bring the offering of its season rain. I was never fond of the rain. A gentle mist, per se, was allowing imagination to paint the canvas, so to speak. I received another call, this time from one of my informants. He was keen to inform me that he had overheard a rumor of their location of the new manufacturing location. He claimed to have a reliable source, and it had narrowed the location to the southern area of Willow Creek, somewhere near the river in the local neighborhood. The area was one of the less affluent in the city, so its operation tended to go unreported at best. I assured him that I would begin a sharper surveillance of the neighborhood with a keen eye for suspicious activity. He bid me a hearty good luck, and added a stay safe, to his departure. I hastily made my way to the day's activities. It would be a long day. I had the descriptions of his suspects in my phone now, and I made my way to a suspected drug exchange location. The dealers had been using the park in Oasis Springs to sell to the local young people. At the park? I hid my anger as I made my way to a crowd of young people to question them. Several young girls were playing at the chess tables in the garden area. My apparent reputation had preceded me, and with a curt question, and possibly with the glare of authority I unleashed on the pair, one of the young girls immediately pointed to the other as the dealer. I quickly placed her into custody, as she protested, and proceeded to the station for questioning. Under scrutiny, I pressed the dealer for her cooperation with my investigation. I then rather forcefully described to her that, if you gave your current position here, and now, a brief moment of thought, you should easily conclude that to secure her arrest, it had to be from someone informing to me where the drugs were being sold. After another moment of consideration, rather forcefully, she accepted my conditions to become an informant for me. She reluctantly agreed, as is typical in narcotics investigations. No level of honor among thieves, so to speak. I then pressed her as to the new location. Where had she gone to actually purchase the grilled cheese in bulk levels, that she and others would then sell in measured amounts individually to the buyers? With much hesitation, she eventually confided to me that it was in an old hollowed-out tree in the southern area. I could secure entrance from the northern side of the tree facing away from the water. She said that to enter, I merely need to know its location, and no security measures were set in place yet. As the move had been hastily made, I released her with a stern warning not to divulge her decision to become an informant, and she left. I now had 2 confidential informants, and had not tipped my hand by telling anyone at my station. I still suspected a mole. I examined all the evidence so far. Several unsolved murders. A drug lab quickly moved in the middle of an investigation to its possible location. Feeling quite content now with the current direction I had secured, I made my way home to find Eliza sitting in the newly designed nursery, and we spent a few moments together, with no thoughts to the outside events. I expressed my undying devotion to her and our new-to-be family, and was, as always, reassured to her one devotion to me. Something that I understood was not a common emotion in this cold and dreary world of SIM. So many people fail to appreciate the little things, the times we can remember as welcome and comforting as we race into age. We succumbed to a rather rousing discussion of possible name for the child. Be it a boy or a girl. I preferred Humbert for a boy, and Lolita for a girl. She was not amused by neighbor Cough, and countered with Warren and Emily. We would come to a mutual understanding to think further on the matter, very diplomatic of her indeed. We decided to go for an afternoon stroll in the nature around our neighborhood, and lazily meandered through the grass, enjoying each other's company as when we dated so many years ago. As we lazily strolled together, I was drawn to my remembrance of her in her recent youth. I found the attraction of the mere scent of her would drive me wild with tenderness. We sat and simply exchanged worry for delight and fear for fortitude. We were in this as a couple, and I promised to her she would never be alone. The evening was approaching now, and we sauntered homeward, and, as in days gone by, we lay in each other's arms like randy young teenagers with no parental supervision after release from school. Returning to my work and armed with my service revolver, I lay in surveillance and waited for someone to approach the area of the tree. It wasn't long at all before I watched as a young man entered and then hastily returned. I immediately confronted him with his arrest. He resisted and, I am ashamed to say, I unleashed my pent-up frustrations on him. His resistance brought a swift and somewhat excessive force from me to secure his arrest. After some physical persuasion from me to behave, he succumbed to my persuasion and was subdued. I called for transport officers and booked him for possession and resisting arrest. I returned home to a very uncomfortable wife, as it seemed that soon she would give birth to our first child. After a tender rub from me for her tension-filled neck, she said she felt a bit better. She was excited and a bit fearful, yet it was a welcome time in our household. We displayed some physical affection and held each other tightly, and then, as we dreamed away a moment of time, lost in rapture and bliss, her water broke, and we rushed to hospital. I will admit, I was a bit intimidated with all the mechanisms of medicine, and the flurry of activity in the birthing ward was not very unlike the elevated with seeming cause seen in my own profession. Yet I wielded any thought of authority to the doctors in attendance, and Eliza, ever the trooper, calmly gave birth to our little girl. Indeed, as you may have already surmised, she was to be named Emily. Eliza had won the game of the name. I watched as she delicately held the small child in her arms, a feeling that, even though I was also a new parent, I could never begin to compare my humble feeling with that of a new mother with her child. I watched with tender wonder as she caressed and held young Emily, with a smile on her lips that betrayed her heart. We kissed, and it seemed we floated on air. We returned to the maternity ward for recuperations and to await discharge. On our return, Eliza spent her recuperation applying her motherly instincts to the baby. She was quite a wonderful sight to behold as she reveled in the child we had created. I am always relive the memory of that very day, and will forever be grateful. That evening I received an invitation to assist in the planned raid on the suspected drug manufacturing facility I had previously discovered through my surveillance. It would be conducted by my friend's narcotics intervention detail, as it was in their jurisdiction. And I quickly filled in the precinct's captain of my findings, and we planned our intervention. He had amassed quite a force to complete our task. We assembled together a few stones' throw from the suspected entrance and examined our options for entry. As the entry might become quite compromised should the suspect possibly having been informed of our presence. I did not know how far the compromise in my own department has spread, and the safety of the officers was paramount of concern to the captain. At the entrance I wired my informant and told him to notify the occupant within to please come to the entrance for a possible large purchase of goods. He did so, and we prepared. The suspect arrived at the entrance, quite startled by our presence. and tried to flee the scene. I applied a level of force that displayed our intent to place him in a cell for what might be the rest of his life. And, after a brief struggle, I placed him under arrest for manufacture of narcotics for distribution and sales. With no rest for the wicked, I returned to the task at hand. I entered the hole in the tree. I gazed in awe at the scale of the operation. Well over several tons of grilled cheese lay crated and packaged for distribution. More than enough to possibly kill every single person residing in SIM. I took stock of the operation. The sheer scale was quite impressive, for a criminal enterprise that is. It was a grand feeling, I must say, to know that we had finally put an end to this scourge on our youth. With a slight smile of satisfaction I left and returned to the entrance to report the area was clear of danger.